Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for another very special edition of WOWSA Live. We're actually with Katie Blair, who just did a very interesting swim in the Caribbean. Welcome.
Hi, Stephen. Glad to be
Yeah.
here.
You still look tan from your swim. Could you tell us what happened?
Lots of sun exposure happened. So it's just a really salty ocean that we're swimming in here. And then the sun is pretty intense too, because we're getting pretty close to the equator. So definitely got a lot of sun exposure out there.
Yeah. And just for people who don't know what you did, you attempted to swim from Saint Lucia to Martinique and back. That's 66 kilometers in a straight line, but you didn't go in a straight line, did you?
No, we did not. And we did cover 66 kilometers in the end. It just didn't take us where we wanted it to take us.
Yeah. Can you explain how did you decide upon this particular channel in the Caribbean? Because you've done the English Channel, Catalina, Molokai, you swim around Key West. You've done a lot of major swims, but this swim isn't so popular yet.
Yeah, I really like warm water. About 6 years ago, 2014, I was in the North Channel and I had a pretty bad experience. And that kind of diverted me away from the Ocean 7 adventure. And ever since then, I've been drawn to warmer waters. And so last year, you probably remember Cameron Bellamy's epic
Yeah.
swim from Barbados to St. Lucia, just out of this world. And so that was really fascinating to me. And I kind of started looking, what kind of swims are available in the area. And also for some time had this idea, I wonder what it would be like to swim for 24 hours, because you see people swimming 50, 60 hours and you just wonder what it would be like. And so I ended up contacting Sue Dyson,
Okay.
who's living here in St. Lucia. And I just asked her, do you think I could maybe swim around the island, which is about 75 miles? And we talked a little bit about my swimming background and the length of that swim, and kind of came to the conclusion that's probably a little bit much. Like, you've never done anything longer than 26 miles. You probably want to work up to something like that. And so we decided on something in the 40-mile distance range, and the double channel was that distance. And so that's what we ended up doing.
Got it. Now, was this planning this year or did you start it a few years ago?
We actually first started talking about the circumnavigation last fall, and then decided, if this goes well with the double channel, then we're going to move forward with that. So it's kind of a stepping stone. But the original double channel swim was planned for June. And then due to COVID-19, we're all stuck at home and on lockdown. So we pushed it back to October.
Okay. Did that change from June to October? Did that change anything because of weather in the Caribbean? Or was it just a good date?
Typically that would fall within hurricane season.
Mhm.
But hurricane season, I believe, starts around July, August timeframe, so pretty early. And the way that the island is located, they can pretty much see the weather systems coming a little bit ahead of time. And so that gives us an advantage. But it was a little bit of a concern of mine that we might have maybe a little bit more wind.
Okay. And what was your swim window? Did you go down there a week before, 3 days before?
I arrived on the island, let me see, 1 week ago on Friday. That would have been the 9th. And then, so we're leaving on the 20th. So I had an 11-day window technically, but of course, by the time you're situated, it's shorter, probably boils down to maybe 6, 7 days.
Uh-huh.
And so we were pretty lucky that it worked out with the timing the way it did.
Got it. And who was on your team? Who helped? Who was your pilot? Sue was obviously a major part.
Yeah, most of my team was local,
Okay.
and I'd have to make sure that I pronounce everybody's name right. I'd have to read it off the list. But most of the team was local. One of the main captains was Captain Will. He was really helpful in everything. Sue Dyson was on the boat, and so she was just a fantastic resource and working tirelessly and getting permissions. We ran into some issues with Martinique being on lockdown due to COVID-19, and so I needed a special permission to even be able to step on the island.
Okay.
That was interesting. So lots of just organizational things that were complicated by the current circumstances.
Yeah. Did you have to get tested before you arrived the island and showed them paperwork? Or what were the special circumstances?
Yeah, my son and I actually traveled together. This is his
Okay.
first time being on the swim with me. He's now 15, so it was really exciting. But we both had to get our COVID-19 tests done, and we had to get email permission from the government here in St. Lucia and present all of that at the airport in Miami to be able to fly into the
Okay.
country.
Okay. So what time did the swim start?
We started on Tuesday morning at, I think, 1:25 a.m.
Okay.
From one of the local coves here in Saint Lucia. And just the first couple of hours, we swam into darkness and kind of had a pretty good course towards Martinique. It's fairly straight. If you look at the tracker, that went pretty well.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to get to Martinique?
About 12:30.
12:30. Yeah.
Hours.
And then how did you feel during that first 12 hours and 30 minutes?
Pretty good. I'm not a huge fan of swimming in the dark. It's always a little bit scary.
Yeah.
You just don't know what's in there. And so I'm always glad when the sun comes up. And then once the sun came up, I kind of almost missed the darkness again because it was so intense. It was really fun because as we got closer to Martinique, there was a young boy from Martinique. His name is Christophe Melot. He swam from Saint Lucia to Martinique 2 days prior at 12 years old, which was just fantastic. And so him and his dad, they were out on the boat and they came to shore with us, and Christophe and I took a quick picture, and Christophe is all about 4 feet tall and has a 1 foot wide smile and is just full of energy and love for the water. And that was pretty cool that we got to meet.
Yeah. And then, so you got to Martinique. Did you rest for 5 minutes? Did you get on shore and jump back in the water right away? What was your strategy?
The rules that we had for my landing in Martinique is I wasn't allowed to take my ankles out of the water. So I was standing ankle deep in shore water. And then my crew just gave me some additional zinc and sunscreen to apply. And I switched goggles and quick feed. And I think it took about 5 minutes, and then we started going back out again.
And what were you eating and drinking along the way?
I tend to use a product called Perpetuum, which is from Hammer Fuel. It's kind of a protein carb shake mix. It's not everybody's thing, but I like it. It sits really well with me. I like Hammer gels, and then I also had a lot of coconut water and bananas.
Oh, okay.
And we had planned a special treat after the first crossing, which was a cheeseburger, which was fantastic. Took a little while to eat. It was logistically not entirely easy to get that down, but that definitely motivated me.
Great, great. And then, so describe the return.
The return, everything went fine in the beginning. Obviously, we swam into a second night, and I knew from the get-go, since I don't like night swimming all that much, and by then I'm going to be in the water for a pretty long time, that second night is going to be hard. And my crew kind of knew that, and even my son knew that. He had rested up, so he was at every feed throughout the night. And I kind of hoped to maybe, after 12 and a half hours for the first leg, I'm like, well, maybe 14, 15 hours to take us home. And so once we reached that time, 3, 4 in the morning, I kind of started asking, like, what's going on? How far away are we? And didn't get a lot of answers. And so started having some issues too from some minor jellyfish stings. We actually found out they're called hydroids. It's a very small, it's an animal. It looks like a plant, but it stings a similar type of venom, just in a very low dose. But I started having some skin reactions, and then I started having some tongue swelling. I wasn't sure if that was the salt water or if that had anything to do with the stings, because they weren't terrible stings. They were just kind of minor. But that turned into an issue around 4 or 5 in the morning, where I couldn't speak really well anymore. So they did end up giving me some antihistamines, which it responded to. So I was like, there's definitely something allergic to it on top of the salt water. But then I got stung some more, and it kind of came back, and it became difficult to have fluids at the rate that I wanted to have them and get enough nutrition in, which at that point I kind of knew I'm on borrowed time. I'll only have a couple hours left probably.
Okay. And describe to people what happens when you swim so far in warm, salty water.
I hadn't swum that far in warm, salty water, and I've heard it from, some of the great ones in our sport that have done these monster swims. And the salt water, especially in Saint Lucia, is very salty, and so it's really abrasive. You're going to experience some swelling of the lips and tongue area and throat and nose, and just it's really painful after a little while. And so we try to use Listerine, or maybe some people put Vaseline or coconut oil in their mouth to try to protect it, but it's just over time it really gets to you.
Yeah. And speaking, your tongue, did your tongue swell up?
Yeah, actually a lot of swelling, and so that made it really difficult to swallow. And I'm still kind of trying to figure out how much of that was allergic and how much of that was the salt water. But that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on if I want to do a swim of that length again.
Yeah. And then when were getting all those jellyfish stings, you had the antihistamines, and you said to yourself, I have a few hours or 3 or 4, or whatever it was, hours left. Um, did you still have hope that you could finish?
I did, and it was really interesting. About 5 in the morning, I could see the coastline, and you know how it is from the water. It always looks a lot closer than it actually is. And I could see the hotels, and I could see some of the beaches and the restaurants and the lights. And I was convinced, and I was probably a little bit tired too, but I was convinced this is maybe a 2-3 hour swim
Okay.
max. And so I was really dead set on that. And so as we kept swimming, and those 2 and 3 hours passed, and those hotels didn't look any different in daylight. They actually looked further away. Um, it got a little frustrating, and I started asking the crew a little bit more often. And there were several feeds where, I got the information I'm about 5 miles out. And if you look at the tracker, we're kind of parallel to coast. So for
Yes.
several hours there, I'm 5 miles out. I'm just not getting anywhere closer to the coast.
Um, uh, and then explain about that current. Was it the current, or it was the wind, or what was pushing you away or parallel to the island?
There's a current that goes out west towards, out of the channel.
Uh-huh.
And I think honestly, that was a navigation mistake in the middle of the night that was small in the beginning. And as you kind of see things going off course, once you're in that current, it becomes very difficult. And I think one of the issues was that, some of the pilots are not really used to running the boat that slow. And
Yeah.
so the boat just becomes really vulnerable to drift. And so it just reacted a little differently. And once we were kind of drifting, it just became incredibly difficult for me to make any headway towards the opposite direction. So I think that we're probably doomed fairly early on, but we kept trying to, maybe hit some lucky current or have something happen to where I would be able to come back over, but it probably wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what's going through your head right now, or at that time. As it was getting closer to you stopping, what were you talking to yourself about? In your head, what were you thinking?
I was just thinking, okay, just another hour. And you keep doing that for hours on end, And so um, one big thing for me was this is my first time with my son on the boat, and just kind of looking at the faces, not of only him, but the crew members, and the mood getting a little bit quieter because I told them I have a hard time swallowing, and they heard me kind of struggle to have food. And so they got a little bit worried. And I mean, I knew I probably could have pushed a little bit further, but then we're really kind of getting into that territory where you're going to pull me out of the water and have to take me to the ER. And I don't know if I want to get to that point. So I felt like I asked, how much longer is it going to be there towards the end? It was still the 5 miles. I'm like, well, in good conditions, if I'm fresh, that could take me 2.5 hours. But we're not looking at that. We're looking at probably more like 5 hours with
Yeah.
current and probably increasing current. So it wasn't really likely. So yeah, it feels a little bit, it was easier at the time because I was in so much pain. It was really nice to get out and just take care of my tongue. I couldn't even talk for a little while. But now it stings a little bit, I got to be honest.
Uh,
But I'm still happy that I got the distance in.
yeah. I can't even imagine. You're in pain, but you see your son's face on the boat, and he must have been so worried and maybe even shocked a little bit. Were you thinking about him also in this?
Yeah, yeah, like he started to worry, and I think he was asking questions of the crew members, and um, it's definitely not. I don't want him to think it's his fault that I decided to get
Yes.
out or anything, because he was worried about that. But it's a consideration. I wanted it to be a good experience and not something that was traumatic or awful in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get on the boat, and you're coming to shore. What was said to you, or was everybody quiet? Did people hug you? What was the atmosphere on the boat?
It was a little bit somber. I think everybody's disappointed. We worked so hard. We were out there for 29 hours, and it is disappointing, but that's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Yeah.
I think at the same time, everybody was proud that we made it that far, but um, people were just kind of worried about the breathing issues and the tongue issues, and I couldn't talk. I was sick for a little bit. So it's mainly just kind of, trying to get me to be comfortable. And I don't remember too much either because I fell asleep pretty quickly.
Okay. Did you go to the hospital or did you see a doctor?
Yeah, I was thinking about it, but then, once I was out of the water, my tongue started feeling better. I'm like, let's give this a couple hours and let's take some antihistamines and see how things go. And I was fine after a few hours.
Yeah. And how is your body, your muscles, your skin, your mouth?
I was really surprised, like muscle wise. Usually I get shoulder pain on these long swims. I breathe to the right, which is not ideal. You're supposed to do both sides and all that. And so usually my left shoulder starts tweaking, but I had no joint pain at all. Muscle wise, I was fine 2 days later, but we did an obstacle course yesterday. They have one here at the hotel. It's like these inflatable things on the water. And so I can move and I'm fine, but the mouth thing is really still bugging me a little bit. That hasn't healed completely.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
been
In
slow.
talking to Cameron, after it took him a while for taste and everything to
Yeah.
return.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised. You would think it would heal a little bit faster, but it's lingering.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like after your swim, you and your son are still enjoying the island.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you still have to be proud. You're one of the few people who've crossed the Saint Lucia Channel. Anyway, you did that
Yeah.
12 and a half crossing and you certainly, showed your potential. So what do you think you're going to do next? Are you just going to enjoy this, reflect upon your swim? What is next?
I'm still stuck on that swim around St. Lucia. And so the idea is to come back next July.
Okay.
We're working on putting together a crew and studying currents and figuring out the best way to do it. I don't know if I can swim 75 miles, but I just kind of want to find out.
Oh,
The other nice thing is you can still get the swim ratified if you end sooner, just be a coastal swimmer, not a circumnavigation, but that's a nice option to have too.
yeah.
Should have run out of battery at some point before I'm all the way around it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just like the idea of being out there and just kind of pushing and seeing how far we can make it. Like it's the adventure, it's not so much the records lists or the times or anything.
Yeah, that's great. And you recently came out with a new book too.
Yeah, I had some extra time with the COVID thing, and so I love writing anyway, and so this was kind of something I wanted to do for some time, and I feel like I've never been one of the top swimmers or anything, and I don't hold any big records or super fast, but I feel like it's taught me a lot over the years, and as I was negotiating life problems and just life happening, swimming was like the constant. It was always there as a way of coping with things, as having something else to focus on, and so I really wanted to share how swimming impacted me. And so it's not only about swimming, it's also kind of about life things. But I just wanted to share some of those stories because I think they're pretty entertaining.
Yes, yes. And where can people buy your book and what is it a big book? Is it 100 pages? Can you describe more? It's called Lessons
Yeah.
from the Water,
You know
a
what? If you
swimmer's
want me
journey
to, I
through.
can actually grab a copy real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Lessons from the Water, and it's about 100 pages. So it's fairly slim. It's a fast read. I think it would probably take about an hour and a half or so. And primarily you can get it on Amazon. You can get
Okay.
it directly through me or Amazon internationally. Just searching for Lessons from the Water and my author name. And so this is what it looks
Oh,
like. It's pretty slim. It's I do it's a little bit pricey because I have a lot of photos in it because I just thought that would make it more entertaining. Um, but yeah, it talks a little bit about the English Channel and like all the major swimming adventures I've had over the years and some of the minor ones too. So I think it's a fun little read. Nothing life altering, just about 100 pages. So it's not like it's a Harry Potter sequel, but you get through pretty easy.
yeah. Well, it's been a real pleasure to talk with you, to relive your adventure, and it truly was an adventure. And we look forward to following you and continuing to hear about your successes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye.